and welcome. Veronica is out today, so accepting all the roles and responsibilities of partner in crime will be Jane Chwaniak, Vice President of Customer Success. Welcome, Jane. I know that you're usually always here, but you get to be taking the reins a little bit today. So,
Yep. Hi, everybody.
as we get deeper into the holiday season, many customers are asking the same questions. How can we quickly see when call volume drops, and what is the best way to keep an eye on it? With people taking time off and schedules changing, it's completely normal for activity to slow down, and it helps to know how to track those trends. In today's session, we're going to go ahead and look at some simple ways to monitor low call volume using either dashboards or reporting. I'll walk you through what those patterns can look like, how to spot them, and how you can use tools in ISI to stay on top of the changes during the holidays. And you can kind of see that today, even in our session. We typically have a lot more attendees, and being the holidays, I'm sure people are wrapping things up for the end of the year, or off on the holidays. What's to say? And so yeah, I can even see that today as an example. So before I jump in, let's go ahead and just cover the Q&A, the rules or the guidelines for this for the webinar. There's going to be time for questions and answers following this presentation. You can ask questions regarding today's topic, or honestly anything with our application in general. Also, the chat section is disabled, so just utilize the Q&A portion. Just ask those questions. Jane will be watching those as they go, and if she sees anything that needs to be brought up in the moment, she will do so. And then lastly, once the presentation is over, you'll have the ability to unmute yourself, but I just ask to use the hand raise function so that we can call people in the order they were received. Not that we have that many people today, but there it is. So lastly, I'm going to keep the recording going during the Q&A, but I'm not going to use that for the video that I keep. As I've said in the past, I just only use it to remind myself of the questions that are been asked afterwards. So as always, thank you for being here, and let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to my browser, and as you can see, I've already logged into the product, and I'm looking at currently just the I'm looking at the standard dashboard in the Q Analytics application, and I've made 2 dashboard widgets that kind of are showcasing already some low call volumes. I'm going to start out with dashboards. So you can see here I've added an activity by call type widget. I've also added an activity by call direction widget. And these particular ones are showing we have both a Microsoft Teams and a WebEx environment in this particular, these widgets are looking at both data. And you're going to see here, I've gone ahead and set it for 31 days worth of data, which does cover the week of Thanksgiving. And so you can see our call volume, you're going to see a standard. I would say we roughly do about 80-ish calls per day, maybe, even doubling that depending on the particular day, whether that's internal, whether that's inbound, whether that's local. And you can kind of see that the first week or the second week of October, and then the of November. You'll see that the third week of November, and then the final week, which was the Thanksgiving weekend, you're going to see here that we had a relatively low call volume-ish for the first 3 days, and then we dropped off for Thursday and Friday, as I think lots of customers will do or will see. And so, when utilizing graphs, and it doesn't have to be the holidays per se, you might want to be able to look at a graph like this and say, hey, I'm noticing, a lull in data. What, is that expected? Are we expecting to see less call volumes? And it doesn't have to be on an entire data source. You could easily change this up and look at low call volume from a department standpoint, although we would need to build that differently in the widgets, or at least in a different widget, because no, that's not true. That's not true. In these widgets, you do have the ability to edit the filters and add an additional filter to say you wanted to look at another part of the application, or the other part of the department. So you would say, I want to look at customer support. So we can come down here and we can look for customer support and save. And you're going to see there that your graph will change, and then you can kind of see from a low call volume whether you're going to see a fluctuation in calls to a specific department. Okay, and so you could make multiple widgets that span whether it's the entire data source, whether you want to do it based on a department structure, and in other widgets on the classic dashboard, you could do it on maybe specific trunking. Maybe you're doing a transition and you're migrating people off of an application or a platform onto another, and still within ISI. Say you're going from like a UCM to a WebEx environment, and you're wanting to monitor the call volume drop off on those UCM extensions because you're migrating them all. Maybe you'll set up a widget that specifically is going to show you kind of that information. You'll see call volume, and as you switch people over, you'll see that call volume kind of taper off. And then when you still have data left on the UCM, you could still utilize those widgets to kind of give you an idea of what's left. What have I not migrated over? What do we still seeing traffic wise on that particular cluster? Okay. And so yeah, you could come in here, add the widgets that you need. So you could add in, again, call type. You could activate it by call type, and then you can start to set up that widget. The default for this one, I'll throw that up here and make it a little bit bigger. The default is going to show you all the data sources, and it's just going to do 7 days worth of data. So, you come on in, like I've shown in the past, and either change your filters on what specifically you want to see, and maybe the date and time, change it up to be a longer version, 31 days being your max on, no, that's not true, 63, I think is the max on these. I always get the classic and the new engine. The classic definitely is limited by 31 days in this one. So we'll change up to 63. And here's another example of our entire data source. And again, you're going to notice if you're just looking at these widgets, low call volume during the holiday weekend of Thanksgiving. I think for larger companies with lots more calls, the drop off in the holidays is a lot more apparent than, say, this particular site that I'm showing. Okay. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to start out or I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to go to Classic because I think that there's some good reporting in Classic that's going to show you some differences in how you can report on that low call volume. We're going to go ahead and jump into Classic. And I even went ahead and set up some widgets here as well, and they have a little bit of a different flavor to them, So here it does show, low call volume. You can also see that Thursday and Friday, pretty low call volume. We did a different kind of style of graph here as well, so you can kind of see, and this is showing both the Teams and the WebEx data, so you're kind of getting an idea of both systems and their call volume. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually dive into the reporting. So let's go ahead and go to reports. Let's go to reports. And now I've created 2 reports that I think are going to showcase the low call volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run them. I'm going to run an example to show you, and then I'm going to show you how I built it. So the first one I'm going to do is just your standard low call volume reporting. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And as you can see, this is our designer. And what I've done is I've added in dates, and then I added in counts. Okay, and I added count in a couple of times, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a few moments. When I recreate this report. But it does an all count. It does by day. So by day, an all count of calls, an inbound count, an outbound count, and then an internal count. Okay, and then I told it to graph it. So I wanted to graph both the inbound and the outbound calls on that. And then what I've gone ahead and done is constrained, and I did it for a month. You can change it up and do longer, although for the graphing, it will only do a month. So keep that in mind. But I'll do 30 days because I want to see just, Thanksgiving. And we're going to go ahead and run this. So we're going to go up to the green button, click on that, and I'd prefer HTML over PDF. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can see here, it breaks it down by the day. it gives you an all count. It gives you inbound, outbound, and internal. And you can kind of see here the week of Thanksgiving or the weekend of Thanksgiving, you're seeing, a drop in calls the 27th to 28th and so forth. And if we scroll further, you can kind of see here that call volume change. Okay. So we can see, the 30th, the 29th, 28th, 27th, those are the lulls, and that is going to show you kind of a graph showing you the low call volume. And so how would you build this? How would you create something and you could add a lot more to this, and you could do a lot more with it. It doesn't have to be just on all of your data. Again, call volume doesn't have to be on holidays. It can be on specific events, whether there are, or even high call volume. I mean, we can even do the opposite of that. We could do like a high call volume and you'll see a spike in your call records that you don't normally see average wise or whatever. So how I built this report is very simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back out and we're going to go into the templates. This is where you can build your reports from scratch based on a template. And we're going to use one that if you've worked with me on a one-on-one basis, you'll know that I tend to come in here and design my own, which can be daunting to some, but I find it handy to be able to start out with what I know I want to show. And I'm going to do a designer summary. A designer summary has no fields whatsoever set to the report, which means it's a blank slate. If I ran it now, I would see nothing because it would actually probably stop me from trying to do so. It'll say, hey, you have to have at least one field in the product in order to run. Okay. And so what I did prior is let's go ahead and throw date in there. So it'll break the calls down by date. And then I went ahead and added count. Count, if I throw it in there, I'm actually going to do it 4 times. It's the same field. If I were to run the report right now, it'd be the same values in every single column. Because if we go into the attributes, which we just covered attributes in one of my previous office hours, attributes on this one does show the ability to change an aspect of this field. And so right now it's doing all call types. So if I do the drop down, you can actually see that I could define it to be other call types if I wanted to. But for now, we're going to call this an all count because we're doing all. Right? So we'll push OK. Black dot appears showing I've changed it. We've changed the name of it. Now we can come to the second count, click on attributes. This one, I want this to be my inbound. And so to label it and such, we'll call it inbound. And save that. Block dot. We're going to go ahead and do this as your outbound. Now here's the thing. You do have local, which is technically outbound. You have long distance, that's also outbound. International is outbound. Info assist is outbound. And that's all the ones. Those are all the outbound call types. If you wanted to specify just the one kind of call type, like let's say you wanted to see the difference between your local and your long distance calls in your system and they're defined as such, you could make multiple columns that'll just show local and long distance so you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. Because some people will also add things in like cost so they can see the costing of that, but that's a whole nother office hours. So we're going to stick with outbound, which covers all of those columns that are outbound minus inbound and minus internal. So we're going to do outbound and we're going to name it as such. So outbound, say okay, got a block that. And then the last one, I just like throwing internal in there just to get an idea. Internal count, push okay. So now we've got these fields. We don't really need anything else quite yet, just based on what we've built. We're going to go to constraints. And again, I'm just going to do the last month, so the last 30 days worth of data. I don't necessarily need to put any other constraints in here quite yet, but I will go ahead and run this. And here's where you saw the report before. So it's showing you the all counts for the day and then breaks it down by inbound, outbound, and internal. Okay, I did not turn on graphing, so we can come back to that. We're going to go back to our field section. We can turn on graphing for the all count if we wanted to, change up the different style of graphing if we wanted to. So if you wanted a line chart rather than a bar chart or stacked bar, you could do that. And if we reran this, then you're going to see the chart to show that. Okay. Now, because I have not actually done a constraint, and you don't necessarily have to, but you could constrain on just something specific you wanted to see, or as an idea, I could go in here and say, if you are wanting to see low call volume between your different departments, you can easily add department in there. This would require that your directory is flushed out and is updating correctly and accurately. Directory is definitely one of the ones that you would want to make sure is up to date so that when you do run this, these numbers reflect correctly. And so if I run this, then we would see accounting and we'd see those calls. We'd see, and if I come down to customer success, here's their calls, customer support and their call volume. So again, you see a kind of a, and like I said, if you have a lot more calls, you'd be able to see a graph that like really shows, call volume across the board. If they standard, your standard customer support team, were to take a pretty hefty amount of calls and then you see the lulls or a high, that might be the case. But this is how you could break it down by the different departments and the people within it. Okay. Another suggestion, and this one's really for your engineers, and more so, I think, on a UCM side, and maybe even a Avaya, some of these other phone systems, WebEx, or even Teams, not as much. It just depends. But where I'm going with this is route, or trunk is really what route turns into. I would want to maybe see call volume on a trunk and run. Now, because we're on WebEx and we're on Teams, we're not really going to see a lot because it's just, I think it depends on how it's built in. So I think the majority of the calls just come through our main site route, and then you'll see the call volume. And then I think with WebEx also, sometimes they don't have a route or it's part of the data. So you're going to see them show up through none. So this is not a great example to demonstrate from our system, but it is from a standpoint of, like I said earlier, if you're migrating, and you're moving systems or, whatnot, and you need to see the volume that is changing, this is how I do it. I build a kind of a report that breaks it down by day and total calls, and I want to break it down by the trunk, and I'll run this report on a time period. If we're seeing, for standard seeing 1,000 calls per day for your entire system and suddenly we're seeing less and you don't know why, sometimes I'll even do this to determine maybe a specific subscriber in a UCM environment has stopped sending data, or maybe it's not configured correctly, or maybe there's something going on with that system. That's something that I would do to kind of determine those issues. And, or like I said, if you're migrating and you wanted to see, hey, that trunk shouldn't be getting any calls anymore. That one should be done, but we're still getting data. Let's go ahead and investigate why. And then you can go build a detail report on that trunk to see that information. Okay. So depending on what you're building, you would add this in. So this could be, department. We'll add department in here. I can't spell today, or my fingers don't want to use keyboards correctly. There we go. Department, last month or whatever time frame you're looking for. And then, as we always say, update how you want to send it and, maybe the name of the report. So maybe this is my monthly call volume summary. And then we're going to save this report and give it a name. So let's do a monthly call volume report by department and say OK. And so now I go back out to my saved templates, and here's where I would have my monthly call volume report by department, and I could come in here and set this up to, say get emailed to me on the 1st, and you can kind of take a look at the last 30 days to see, what's going on volume wise, or whatnot. Okay. So that's kind of what I usually do when it comes to low call volume. We really break it down, by your department or by the data source or even by trunks. I like to build dashboards in either the new dashboard or classic to show that, like, we could again break this down by department. So again, I know I built this one for WebEx. If I were to copy this, which we've done before, which is to copy it to my office hours dashboard, let it load, and then what I'm going to do is I can break this down by department. So if I wanted to edit this widget, constrain on it, and do it by organization, I think that's enough here. All we have to do is make that change, and we'll actually change this by department. Save and close. You're going to see here now that the daily call statistics widget that we had, which is now by department, has an organization icon here on the left. We're going to wait a minute for this widget to load. It usually doesn't take too long. It should take only a couple of seconds. There we go. And so right now it's doing the entire organization. You'll see here by selecting this, I could say ISI Analytics is the company, and I wanted to do it by, say, customer support, and push OK. It will refresh itself, take again a couple of seconds to load, and you're going to see this widget show just that department. Okay. All right. And so, yep, here, and we see kind of no calls for the customer support lines on the Thanksgiving weekend. So, all right, that's kind of what I was going to show you, is how to build, either reporting and or widgets that are going to show you low call volume that you can easily come in and check and get an idea. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be just low call volume. It could also be no call volume, or maybe it's a spike in call volume. Maybe you guys are, maybe, a new program has started in one of your departments and you're seeing a hefty spike in call volume. Maybe you are, experiencing some kind of, call attacks, where they're calling you and, calling into your organization and it's overwhelming your system.